Max Verstappen feels threatened by Lando Norris, and the way he's racing proves it. This is my thesis statement. Welcome to Race Weekend Update, a safe place for people with spicy F1 opinions. For the first 50 laps of the Austrian Grand Prix, I found myself questioning whether or not there would even be something worth making a video about. The sprint was uneventful, quali was whatever, and the race was mediocre right up until Max's slow for Red Bull but fast for Sauber pit stop. I'll be honest, the Grand Prix was not doing a great job of holding my attention this morning. I'm going through some shit in my personal life right now, and a great Formula One race like we had in Canada or Spain was exactly what I needed to get my mind off of things. But instead we got 50 laps of whatever, which left me alone with my thoughts. Not good.
Let's do something really scary.
We could go to bed early and be alone with our thoughts.
I kept glancing over, hoping to find something to draw me back into the race, and then suddenly I saw that Lando was within DRS range? What? Didn't Max have a 6-second lead? Turns out I missed Max's 6.5-second pit stop, which put Lando's McLaren right on his ass. Lando catching Max was exactly what this race needed. He kept dive bombing the corners, and then something happened that I didn't expect. Max started defending aggressively, like Ocon tier aggression. I think it was Will Buxton who described Max as having razors on his elbows. We haven't seen Max defending like this since the early days of 2022, before Leclerc went limp. And I think I know why. When Max had a car that was very clearly dominant, he backed off the aggression and was much more focused on keeping his car intact. It didn't matter if someone got past him briefly, he could wait for a safe opportunity and pass later. He always knew he had the pace in hand to reclaim any lost positions. A lot of people, myself included, saw this as Max maturing and calming down. We thought his driving style was relaxing into something less aggressive and more focused on minimizing errors. Well, we were right that he was calming down, but as it turns out, he still has that dog in him. And not only did he let it out today, he released the hounds.
Release the hounds.
You see, Max isn't just a great driver, he's the best, which means that his driving style is incredibly adaptive. When he was in the best car, he took it easy, managed the pace, didn't take unnecessary risks, and as a result, he went 2 years without a DNF. Now that the car advantage is gone and he sees another driver challenging his position at the front, he's got razor blades on his elbows and is sending a message. You shall not pass! One of the things that sets world champions apart is that they do whatever it takes to win, even if it's unsavory. Schumacher was known for being unyielding, and even Senna had a reputation for putting himself into positions where he would leave it up to the other driver as to whether or not they crash. This of course makes them unpopular with the other drivers, but they do it for one simple reason. They want to instill fear in their competition. They want other drivers to know, I will not yield, and if you challenge me, then we'll both be out. You don't see this kind of behavior from someone who believes they have the championship comfortably in hand. You never saw Lewis acting like that when his closest challenger was Bottas, but when he was up against Rosberg, Alonso, and Verstappen, he bared his fangs and made it clear he was not going to play nice. There were a lot of questions after the race as to how this will affect Lando and Max's relationship, but the reality is, no friendship can survive a title fight. Max got a 10-second penalty for the incident and didn't seem all that bothered by it in the post-race interviews. But Lando was visibly upset. He even said it was up to Max to say something because it was Max who was in the wrong. But if he's waiting for an apology, he's not going to get one. Why? Because I'm pretty sure Max's actions were fully intentional and achieved their intended result. Sending a message to the man he perceives as a threat. You will never get a heartfelt apology from someone who intentionally wronged you. And even if you do, it will always ring hollow. If Lando hasn't learned this lesson already, he will by the end of the year. The definition of jealous is fiercely protective or vigilant of one's rights or possessions, and frankly, I think Max sees this year's championship as rightfully his. So now that it's potentially under threat, he's jealously guarding it. You don't put on that desperate of a defense unless you are concerned about losing. And as the Verstappen family credo goes, if you ain't first, you're last. I can't imagine that Lando's dad is the only winners get rides home type. But now that he's up against a man who was taught that winning is everything from birth, He seems genuinely taken aback by his friend's unexpected ruthlessness. Lando is quite clearly a sensitive guy, and I feel for him, but he's going to have to steel his heart for what's to come if he's ever going to challenge Max for a title. Personally, I come from a niche sporting background. I helped build dodgeball into a sport. I was part of that journey, taking it from recreational to competitive the way other sports did a century ago. I got to watch people go from having friendly sporting attitudes to realizing they need to leave that all behind if they ever want to win a world championship. They say demons run when a good man goes to war. And right now, Lando needs to decide if he wants to remain a good man or go to war. I'll draw a comparison to another sensitive man, one who is famous for being in touch with his emotions, but also a world champion. No, not Seb. He didn't get empathy until after he was done winning championships. I'm talking about Lewis Hamilton. He wears his heart on his sleeve, but he also knows when to get hard, so to speak. When Max was pushing the limits in 2021, Lewis stopped yielding and let it play out. If you watched the press conferences, you could tell this was not how he wanted to race. But he also knew if he gave Max an inch, he'd take a mile. And as I always say, the people you give the most leniency, fuck you the hardest. So he got on his level, and the two of them just let the Halo do its job, saving both of them from certain death as a result of their attitudes. On multiple occasions. And as far as friendships are concerned, when Lewis was up against childhood friend Nico Rosberg for championships, he gave up the friendship to get the championship. And the friendship never recovered. That's what Lando has to come to terms with if he's going to get on Max's level, because there is no question that Max would walk from their friendship if it secured the title for him. Speaking of burning bridges, we have the Canadian positivity guy here with the Canadian summary of the Grand Prix. All you chuds keep flapping your lips about Max and Lando's bromance, but I couldn't care less. What stood out to me about today's race was the podium full of second drivers. What is it going to take for George to finally get some respect? Russell is the only one who seems to be able to win in that Mercedes, yet everyone keeps fawning over Lewis because of his past achievements. And don't get me started on Sainz. At one point, there was a 23-month period where he was the only driver to have beaten Verstappen, and he did so twice. Yet somehow, he's the second driver getting kicked out so Ferrari can hire the number 2 performing driver at Mercedes. Literally, the only guy getting any respect on that podium is Piastri. And that's because people still have schmilt tier expectations for him. It's actually incredible how similar these guys are. They've all got the jam, but are overshadowed by their 10-ply Sally of a teammate. So for today, let's Sally these guys who managed to wheel and snipe their way onto the podium while the big shoots shat the bed. Cheers! And now back to your regularly scheduled programming. For the poll of the week, this week I asked, how do you typically watch an F1 race? Not gonna lie, I wasn't expecting these results. For starters, barely anyone watches at a bar or public place, which I guess is fair enough. The commentary adds a lot, and without it, the experience would be lacking. But I was even more surprised at how few people watch with literally anyone else. Nearly 70% of respondents said that they watch by themselves, which definitely makes me wonder if that loneliness is why F1 Twitter and comment sections are so toxic. Being alone sucks, so maybe it's time to wrangle up a group of friends and start watching together. At least that way, when you have a really spicy comment, you don't have to share it with the whole world. Just your friend who can tell that you're not frothing at the mouth and won't be offended. And on that note, it's time for the spicy joke of the week. Haas scored 12 points, catapulting them into 7th place in the Constructors' Championship. Finishing 6th and 8th, it was their best result in years. But even more impressive was that they managed to do it while spit roasting a Red Bull. Thanks for watching. If you liked what you saw, please send this to a friend who might enjoy it. And if you want to get to know me a little better, why don't you watch this video I made about what it was like being a fan of motorsports before the Halo? I really pour my heart out in that one.